So this is the simple network topology. We have SRX firewall and the internal subnet is 11.11.11.0/24 and the external IP configured on GE0/0/0 is 192.168.0.184, which is connected to an external client machine with an IP of 192.168.0.109. So we will be using this particular client machine for all the testing. And the internal interface loopback LO0.0 and the external interface GE0/0/0.0. Both of the interfaces are in untrust zone, and both the interface here belongs to the untrust VR. So I have untrust VR created where these two interfaces are listed, and these two interfaces are in untrust zone. For simplicity, I have configured them, and the intention is to have a static NAT for the internal subnet 11.11.11.0/24 using the external pool, which is 3.3.3.0/24. And I would like the internal subnet starting from 11.11.11.1 to get translated to 3.3.3.1 when the firewall is doing the source net, and at the same time when the external users are trying to reach out to the internal subnet, for example 11.11.11.11. So the external users will be using the external IP, which is 3.3.3.11 to reach out to 11.11.11.11, and the static NAT will take care of the sequential NATing from the first client until the last client. So the intention is to configure the static NAT for the internal subnet to an external pool and in sequence, so that we don't have to really do the individual configuration for the individual clients inside the internal subnet, which is 11.11.11.0/24. So this is the SRX firewall GUI, and this is the pfSense firewall. LAN interface is having an IP of 192.168.0.109, which will be our client machine for the testing purpose. And this is the SRX firewall. I can show you the interface settings. So we have G0/0/0 with an IP of 192.168.0.184, belongs to untrust zone, and we have the loopback interface with an IP of 11.11.11.11/24 that also belongs to untrust zone. So let's get started. First of all, I'll show you the configuration from GUI, and then we'll try to share the CLI commands to achieve the same. So click on config from the GUI, go to security service, click on NAT, select the static option. So first of all, we'll try to create the rule set, name it as static. So I named it as static NAT. So the routing instance in our case is untrust, but then we can try creating the rule set with zone, and we can select the untrust because our traffic will be coming from the untrust zone from the external network towards the untrust zone. So we will be configuring the NAT considering the flow from outside network to the inside network, from the outside external user coming to untrust zone and then getting translated to the internal subnet. So we have selected from zone as untrust. Now we'll create the rule. Click on plus, name it as static NAT. So we'll have to match the source. Let's try to match it up with an IP of 192. So this is going to be our source, which will be initiating the traffic. Port, let it be the default, which covers all the port range. Destination is going to be 3.3.3.0/24. Let's try to update that here. And in the last section, inside then, you will have to mention the internal subnet, which is 11.11.11.0/24. And I'm going to map port as any, destination port as any, which will take into consideration all the port from 0 to 65535. And the routing instance here in our case is untrust, because both the interfaces LO0.0 and GE0.0.0 belongs to untrust VR. Click on save. So now we have the rule created. So now we have the rule set and the rule. You can see here all the parameters. So now next is the policy, and before policy, what we'll have to do is we'll have to create the proxy ARP for the subnet that we have used here, 3.3.3.0/24, so that if there is any ARP request for that particular subnet, our firewall should be in a position to reply. Considering the last IP as the broadcast, I'm going to put the range as 3.3.3.1 until 3.3.3.254. So now we have created the proxy ARP entry for the pool that we have used for the static translation. Next is the rule configuration. Since our traffic is from untrust to untrust and from inside untrust to outside untrust, so we are going to create the policy, security policy, to allow the traffic from outside to inside and from inside to outside. Click on security policy, click on rule. So we will create a rule from untrust zone to untrust zone. So now here in the source zone, we will select untrust. Address is going to be any. If you want, you can have the address defined here. Destination is again going to be untrust, and the address is going to be any, so as the service and the application. Click on next. Advanced security, I'm going to permit this particular traffic, and in the service, well, we can have ICMP if it is already there. So let's try to have ICMP instead of all. So we have ICMP all, permit. So we are going to log at the session close time, log at session initiation time, finish. So let's try to check our policy. Let's try to commit the changes. So the changes are committed, and this is our security policy, which is from zone untrust to zone untrust. Source is any, destination is any. For the ICMP only traffic. So now we can try testing the translation by initiating the traffic from this particular host. So this is our pfSense firewall, the client machine from where we'll initiate the traffic. This is our SRX device. And you can see here, this is the 0.0.0/0. So this is the interface with an IP of 192.168.0.184 that connects to client machine, and the internal subnet is LO0.0 with an IP of 11.11.11.11/24. For simplicity, I have configured it on loopback interface, so we can try testing that. So it is going to refresh in every 2 seconds, and let's try to initiate some traffic from this particular host, which is our client machine with an IP of 192.168.0.109. So to reach out to 11.11.11.11, we'll have to use the external IP 3.3.3.11. And you can see here, let's try to check our session. So you can see here the session. This is the incoming traffic onto the SRX device 192.168.0.109 towards 3.3.3.11, and you can see the reply coming back from 11.11.11.11 to 192.168.0.109. So that basically proves that the translation is working fine on the SRX device. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to initiate some traffic from inside to outside, from the subnet behind the SRX firewall to the external client, which is 192.168.0.109, to check the translation. Let me try to duplicate the terminal so that we can take the session output. And you can see here, so this is the traffic from inside to outside. You can see 11.11.11.11 initiating the traffic towards 192.168.0.109, and the 11.11.11.11 is getting translated to 3.3.3.11 because this is the incoming traffic. So you can confirm that from the state table on the client machine, which is external client, which is the pfSense firewall. You can see here 3.3.3.11 towards 192.168.0.109. So to test the translation for other IPs in the subnet, I have changed the IP on the loopback LO0 with an IP of 11.11.11.1. So earlier it was 11, now we have changed it to 1 to test the translation. So now we'll try to see, as you can see here, from the client machine, I'm able to ping 3.3.3.1. Let's try to check the translation here. And you can see here, source machine 192.168.0.109 towards 3.3.3.1. And the translation for 3.3.3.1 is 11.11.11.1, which means that the NAT configuration is working perfectly fine. Let us try to initiate some traffic from inside to outside to capture some session information. And you can see here, when pinging from 11.11.11.1 towards 192.168.0.109, I'm able to receive the response. And you can see here, source 11.11.11.1 towards 192.168.0.109. This is the incoming traffic from 192.168.0.109 towards 3.3.3.1, which means that the 11.11.11.1 is getting translated to 3.3.3.1. So that basically proves that the static NAT translation is working fine for the internal subnet, which is 11.11.11.0/24. To configure the same from CLI, you will have to first create the NAT rule set. Name the rule set as NAT. And we can have from zone untrust as the parameter. Next is the rule. We'll have to create the rule name. And then we will have to match the source address, which is going to be 192.168.0.109, because this is our client for testing purpose. And then we'll have to specify the destination address. Destination address is going to be 3.3.3.0/24. And then we'll have to define the internal subnet. We'll have to define the prefix, which is going to be /24. And then we'll have to define the routing instance. Since this is from the untrust routing instance, we'll have to define that. Next comes the security policy to allow the traffic. So we will have to create the security policy from zone untrust to zone untrust. So now the security policy from zone untrust to zone untrust is completed to allow the traffic from outside to inside, and since our inside network is also in untrust zone, will then be allowed through this particular firewall policy. So this is the security policy: allow, match source any, destination any, application ICMP all, permit. So now we can try testing the same, and before that we'll have to add the proxy ARP for the pool that we have used. So you will have to use the command to add the proxy ARP on the interface facing the external network. Set security NAT proxy ARP interface G0.0.0 address starting from 3.3.3.1 to 3.3.3.254, considering the last as the broadcast IP. Let's try to commit the changes, and let's try to initiate some ping to test the configuration. As you can see, I'm able to ping. Let's try to take a capture to confirm that the translation is working fine. And you can see here the client machine external 192.168.0.109 initiating traffic towards 3.3.3.1, which is getting translated to 11.11.11.1, and the traffic to 192.168.0.109 from the firewall outside. Let's try to initiate some traffic from inside to outside. And you can see I'm able to ping. We can try checking the session information again. You can see this is the incoming traffic to the firewall 11.11.11.1 towards 192.168.0.109, and the return traffic from 109 towards 3.3.3.1, which means that the 11.11.11.1 is getting translated to 3.3.3.1. That's all in this video. See you in the next video, and please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button.